Well, Worlds is officially done for 100 Thieves. Unfortunately, we're in the quarterfinals right now. Cloud9, the last hope, as we record this the day before they play. Of course, this coverage is brought to you by Alienware. But every year after Worlds, I do my best, or during Worlds, after a Worlds run, to talk to every North American team representative, owner, GM, etc. And right now I'm joined by Papasmithy from 100 Thieves to discuss 100 Thieves run this year, not just at Worlds, but overall. So first off, Papasmithy, we should say you're still in Iceland right now.
That's right. Just a little bit of visa stuff to iron out. So a bit of a paid vacation, I guess it feels like after the event. There's definitely conflicting emotions. We see people still in the tournament like C9 and Rue kind of like losses and things like that. But overall, still able to operate on kind of off-season business and meetings, just a bit more creative with the time zones than
Yeah.
before.
So paid workation, I guess, because you're still working.
I mean, look, general managers are always working. Let's be real. If you ignore the Discord message and suddenly some big transfer happened that you could have influenced, then you're not doing
Yeah.
your job.
What's an example of a big transfer right now that you could have influenced?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot ongoing, right? Like this is the spicy time of year where people are talking about what they want to do next year. I think about where we were a year ago. So obviously we didn't make Worlds, we were far off it and had aspirations for more. And the amount of meetings and plannings and conniving that was being done at this point while teams were still active in Worlds was extensive. So you just have to hope that the other seven teams that didn't make Worlds are doing the same level of due diligence right now.
Yeah. No, it's very true. Okay. Well, speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about 100 Thieves year. So obviously, the best year I think 100 Thieves has had since its existence is the first LCS win, really changing up not the dynasty, but kind of the stranglehold that the big three had on the LCS championships for so long. So, going all the way back to the beginning of the year and kind of thinking about where you are now, what has this year been like for you operating the team and managing the whole situation over the course of this year?
I mean, there's a lot packed into a year, right? We came in with a lot to do to get to the goals we wanted to reach and really aggressively wanted to pursue the off season last year to shift our paradigm. It didn't feel like we were going to rise as fast as we needed to with the roster we had at the end of 2020. So we're looking into all options and quickly identified, let's build around someday and see what's possible. Obviously, people know it ended up with the four Golden Guardians players joining us, and that was, there was significant finances involved around that, and you have to make, pitches to leadership to justify any finances. And I believe we had kind of like a high role of, yes, this could be a championship contending team, but things have to go our way, and kind of had that more realistic tolerance around 3 to 4. So, world's aspirations, I guess, is what we were left with. But you're always hungry for more, right? And I've done interviews with you and other people after spring, and definitely weren't left satisfied with where we were at. And then the question was, okay, now in this new world where we can look to other options for mid lane, especially because that was a position where Demonte was the last player signed at the end of the last off season, and that was the position we were most unsure of, and we were looking into what was possible. Obviously, with opportunities coming up and Abu ultimately joining, you still don't, with two mid-year roster changes, bringing in Reaper and Abadaga, aggressively say like first is the goal, anything else is a failure. But you're definitely increasing your volatility upwards. So leaving with a title was obviously the best possible result, and I'm very confident that we're going to be like, I feel like almost every year in the LCS, whether it was like the regional gauntlet or the finals, there was a team that rose to contend, but then either didn't take down the title or the next year couldn't keep the momentum with the big three, like you mentioned. And I'm very confident that we're a team that can do that now. However, you know, obviously very bittersweet feelings about Worlds that I'm sure we'll get into more. But on the whole, like this year was about solidifying that we were a top team, that there was no big three, that a team could break into that. And I'm very confident we've done that. And now I think fans should be looking at great, great first step. What's next? Which I think is how everything needs to be framed. This
Yeah.
world moves on quickly.
Yes, yes, exactly. What have you done for me lately? I guess is the phrase,
Always.
right? Yes.
I haven't gotten out of groups, so apparently not that much.
Yes. Yeah. 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 What the hell? No. Okay. So you guys, you brought in Abadage, you brought in Reaperd in the summer, as you mentioned. You guys were able to take this team and win the championship with it. At what point in time did you realize that that was on the table potentially, right? Because I know you said that at the start of the summer it was just kind of like, okay, or sorry, start of the spring, you're like, Worlds is the goal.
Mhm.
Was there a point in time where you're like, wait, we should make LCS finals the goal because we could potentially do this? I don't know if there was like a game or a moment where you're like, oh my god, this is an opportunity, a potential.
There's a couple of answers to that. Definitely, we had a really fast start in summer, which goes contrary to like, okay, you're the team that made the most significant changes. Surely you're going to take time to warm up. Instead, TL and C9 obviously had their kind of roster woes and indecision around that time around the rosters they wanted to field, and we had a hot start, a great meta read, and obviously you don't want to read too closely into best of one victories or read closely into your own hype, but clearly you're like, okay, there's something about this squad. They're gelling well. I look around, we've got just as good players, if not better, than the opposition. Like, you definitely are buoyed by that, and you're not ruling out something like a championship, but I think there was always what happens when other rosters get solidified, what happens when the honeymoon phase is over, and is this a honeymoon phase? Like, I recall casting Team Griffin when they joined the LCK in the summer of 2018, where this full rookie lineup is just winning best of three after best of three, and you're like, okay, but like this shouldn't happen. Like eventually, order must be restored. And even when you're running your own team, you're wondering, okay, when these lineups get back to what we expect them to be, how's that going to look? You want to be confident, but you don't know, right? And I think the only time that evolved past we're good, but how good was about a week, maybe 10 days out from the final weekend, when we were scrimming and practicing, getting ready for, I guess, the Saturday and Sunday. It's the two match days, the semifinal and final to win it all. Definitely, there were that was when the first confidence was really put in place that we could, and also, honestly, how it felt should be able to win it all. There's always the doubt. Again, there's precedent, right? And precedent and current results are sometimes at odds, and you're always unsure of. But the biggest uncertainty was that best of five against EG, as I've gone on the record about. Like that was one that could have gone either way. But a week, 10 days later, there definitely was confidence that we could win it all.
Yeah. So then you did win it all, which congratulations again. That was it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of times where summer finals there's all this grandeur and excitement, and then like a month later everybody forgets like whatever happened, and then it's just to our earlier discussion, it's like, well, what do you do at play-ins or group stage, you North American team? So let's talk a little bit about the world's run. I have been taking repeated tweets from Jackson, your colleague, because on Hotline League, I think I speculated. I said, well, we don't know how good T1 is because maybe the teams in their group were just weaker. Maybe like 100T was actually not that strong, and since the team, EDG and T1 have really shown up in quarterfinals, I've been getting some tweets back at him from that. So what do you think of 100T's performance in group stage? Because I feel like groups, it's like deceptively difficult to sort of know how good a team is. Oftentimes you have a team that looks terrible, and then actually what happens is they lost to the world champions or something like that at groups. So what are the takeaways for you from 100T's performance in groups?
I definitely hesitate to make any excuses for not getting out of groups. I don't make any excuses for having high expectations of my team as well. And I think both those things cause like ire or criticism from the fans. If you have high expectations, they're not met, or if your expectations seem unrealistic to them. But I think the team that we saw pick up the title was a team that should be expected to get out of groups. Unfortunately, subsequent to that, there were setbacks. And I'm not a man to make excuses. Like every team had setbacks. Fnatic obviously had the biggest setback right on the eve of the tournament, but um, the world kind of conspired in a way where we couldn't maintain our level from there and pay that into groups.
You're sorry, you're talking about closers visa issues, I
Mhm.
assume. Yeah, for those
I
that
mean,
are
both
not familiar.
both junglers, right? We had two junglers on our roster, and even though Ko's our core player, you can at least attempt to scrim with someone who knows your system, and someone like Kenvi. And both junglers not having visa, we were in this real catch-22 of do we stay in North America alongside the visa process that we don't know how long it's going to take. Hopefully it's faster. It's never as fast as you want it to be. And scrim proving grounds teams and NA solo queue with everyone in holiday mode. Like, is that the right decision? Or do
Yeah.
we send the players out to play EU solo queue with no jungler? And is that better? And ultimately we went with the latter, and I consulted the people around me, and it felt like that was the best of a couple of bad decisions. And I think after the fact it's going to be, well, I didn't feel great, but I'm pretty confident that both wouldn't have felt great.
Right.
So that's one of those things I'll rue. But it was still, as you can tell by a 3-3 finish, in spite of all of our shortcomings. I mean, getting out was achievable. If we had performed better in one of the three games that we lost against very, very good opposition, then the group would have been instantly different. People will look at the game against T1 where we couldn't find engages with a strong engage comp with the Malphite top, for example, in the second round robin. Um, they played their comp really, really well and respectfully, and I think T1's leveling up for this tournament shouldn't be underestimated. They are a wonderful team, far superior than what they showed domestically, but it takes two to tango, and we also should have been better about finding engages and being more decisive. And I think indecision was what we'll definitely walk away frustrated with, and that decisiveness is usually a product of winning scrims or team confidence or things like that. And there's many different ways to get decisiveness. It's not just a native player trait. It can be grown or seeds being sown. And ultimately, we weren't able to the point that we could in the LCS. And I'm not going to sit here and defend that. That's something we should have been better at. We weren't. But I guess the only thing I'll say is that after the win against EG, where Danny had his pop-off play and we're all in a bit of shock, that the series doesn't end 3-1, we eventually take that. And the comment I was most struck by was after the series was FBI talking about, man, what was really useful for me is I remembered getting reverse swept by TSM last year and how confident I was 2-0 up against them, and then to ultimately lose in 5 games and how demoralizing that was. I would never let that happen again. And, able to actually put that into words, the team performance, and do that a year later and improve on that. I think for us, we're a young 5-man squad. We're the new guys on the block. I think the experience here and that raw frustration at not being able to put it together like we could have on a different day or with a different prep, that's what you want to crystallize. That's what you want to bottle up, because that will make our already really good players great players in the future.
Yeah. That's well said. Transitioning specifically away from 100 Thieves, but more to like a broader conversation. These interviews I always do, especially the last 2 years, are always a little bit of a more somber note to them. It's like, all right, well, North America's out. Obviously, now we still have Cloud9 in, perhaps making it a little bit more exciting. But it does feel like there's a bit of a tone in the air this year where it seems like people were not going to be mega disappointed with North America not getting out of groups regardless, and like they just felt like expectations were kind of different. But there's still some people that I think are frustrated or meme on us and whatever. You tweeted today that you don't align with the Western League of Legends groupthink of trivializing domestic success and the pursuit of world success. There's some additional follow-ups to that, but I just thought it would be a good jumping off point when I saw you tweet that to bring up in the interview. Maybe you could expand on that a bit.
Sure, there's a lot of different branches to that thought, and some of them are like really easy to share, and some of them are a bit more like critical. But I think the one that's most apt with this kind of more LCS focused interview is that if you remember on Hotline League, there was the hopium caller, as there always is, about
Yes.
your NA is going to do really great. And basically, if you remember, my response was along the lines of, I think there's 5 good NA teams, and that's already a really exciting thing in the playoff race we're in. And I'm not going to sit here and say what that looks like at Worlds, because traditionally, success in NA hasn't been predictive of success in Worlds. And I think I'm worried about how people will attribute what happened in this worlds and their current kind of like, well, this is less bad than I thought it would be, or this is quietly good kind of feeling they have about NA, because I think some people will just come in and be like, EU got dunked and we got less dunked than expected, therefore I feel good. Like these kind of like toxic mindset thoughts. Whereas I'm more of, if regional, how regional success lands after the fact. Um, and it's not just a hard cutoff of you made semis, that's regional success. Because I think if you live and die by making semis, we already have inferior scrim partners and a lot of reasons that NA and to a lesser extent EU find it hard to be competitive with the top Asian teams. And if that's the only bar you have, being like at their level, you could just be found wanting for the next 10 years and never like smell the roses of, wait, something good happened here. And so I feel good that my kind of like positive vibes about NA and the fact that we had I guess you call it like intra-regional competition in NA was good. And then inter-regionally, when we moved to the world stage, was it good enough? I mean, that's for people to decide. I'm happy to say no on that, but was it at least competitive between like how often was North America blown out with no chance of winning games against every region? Like I didn't feel that really with any of the three representatives. And I think I put those two things together and say, this is a nice line in the sand of, okay, we're proudly announcing that the LCS is here and we're able to compete. Not to the level we want. We still want more. Like, I think people look at a tweet like that and they say, convenient thing for 100 Thieves GM to say you guys won LCS and didn't get out of groups. You're trying to, lessen that or do something like that. But that's really not how I feel at all. Like, I'm still really disappointed, bitterly disappointed that we didn't make it out of groups because I believe our group can. But at the same time, I just want to feel good about the fact that North America has some good teams. Those good teams have now shown up internationally and have a baseline to improve on. And I think if we keep moving in the trajectory that we are right now, I just hope that next international tournament, we all feel like we do right now of didn't really know what to expect, but this was better. Because this expectation next time is going to be better than this and then better than this. And so I'm hoping this is a first step rather than just a blip or a meta thing that made everybody volatile. Like I'm quietly confident this is the start of something beautiful.
Gotcha. Okay, so for you, like I think some people might have even read your tweet as being like you shouldn't care about Worlds success or you shouldn't care about what's going on there, and you don't. It's more broad than that. It's like let's focus on or let's celebrate the success of our teams within the region and then also and sort of separate that from the other thing we should be focused on, which is
Look,
is
Travis, you and
Worlds.
I are both complicated people. You can feel one thing and feel another thing, even if they don't fit into one sentence very well.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Worlds is the ultimate place to show what you're about. But not everyone comes to Worlds with equal tool set. Like some people come to Worlds with bigger guns than North America does, and that's just something we have to live by. I guess I'm struck by kind of community sentiment around some teams, like for example, like looking at like the Team Liquid forums and like what their fan base is feeling about another year of 3-3, right? And you read a lot of highly upvoted comments that are along the lines of, "We won 4 titles in a row, and that doesn't mean anything. That didn't mean anything. Like that domestic success, like whatever, and anyone can win an LCS title." And then you start projecting what that means, and it's like, why do we even watch the regional leagues then? Like, why does the CB LOL have so much passion and interest in it, even though the Brazilian teams can't make it to group stage? Like, if we just want to hold ourselves to an insane standard, people say this about Instagram influencers and other things where people like holding themselves to the standard of the elite in anything, then so often you're just left depressed. And if we're all just going to come away from this world feeling that again, then I think that's just missing out on what was a positive experience for North America and hopefully a launching pad for more.
Yeah. No, it's I think a really good point, and I do wish more people celebrated what was happening in North America, especially because if you think about it, I've always kind of said this. It's like 80 or 90% of the world's or the content that you watch each year is just domestic play. Like that stuff matters. It's like that is what the majority of what you're consuming. So to just kind of dismiss it and be like, oh, the only thing that counts as worlds, I think is a little short sighted. So
Like
I
we
do
live in the
appreciate
world
that.
where like 10 teams work really, really hard to win the LCS, spend millions of dollars. There's especially in the top half, like a huge arms race, spend as much money as possible to win LCS. Like that's really important to them. And only one team can look back and justify the 11 p.m. finishes and the lack of work-life balance and partners who resent them for how hard they work with a championship. Like when I walk into the LCS studio next year and see the 100 Thieves banner on the wall, like that's going to be something that I'm going to remember my whole life. Like it's something I've dedicated 2 years to the pursuit of, and a lot of our players, many more. And at the same time, I can say that the first seed from the LCS is a huge underdog against the second or third seed from Korea. And both those things can be fine. It's
Yeah.
just if you only are like, lol, not even as good as the third or fourth best team from Korea, you're reducing something so hard to earn and so hard to, and so much work goes into just this like one line beat. And I don't want to live life that way. And I don't think people should because otherwise a lot of people's lives are pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, right?
Well, looking ahead to next year, obviously, like I'm not going to ask you about roster changes or anything. You're not going to
You
talk
sure
about
you
that
don't want to
here.
hear what I've heard? I mean, there's some spicy
Well,
stuff going on, Travis.
I was going to ask you this, which is you pointed out that there's all the top teams are in this arms race, and there's all this money being spent. We it feels like more than ever there's just a game of musical chairs in terms of like, well, let's swap everything up again and see what we come out with. Maybe we'll do better this year, or how much money can we throw? Do you see that changing for next year? Do you think that will change at all, or is it going to be the same? And is it healthy? Is it good? Is maybe the results that we got this year looking more competitive than we have in a very long time? Maybe it is because of that stuff. So I guess I'm kind of curious as we look forward to next year what you think of the current ecosystem and environment here in LCS.
I think if you're only looking at success for how a team will do in 2022, then I think the big money is the only real path to that. Like I think spending there cannot be decoupled from championship predictive success. People will talk about the amount of imports and um, decry the lack of North American talent, but North American young players playing on world's contenders teams is very unlikely in the short term to lead to higher finishes at worlds. In the longer term and developed right, for sure. And so I think looking at what will happen, I do think there will be the same instability, but I do think there's a ceiling to how much you can do with changing players, and how big that incremental upgrade is between great European mid laner to next great European mid laner or things like that. But I do think that so it's kind of like for every extra dollar spent on upgrading your import, do I think that that dollar might be better spent on North American talent development or things like that? Absolutely. But I don't get to control what every team's kind of like pass fail is for the 2022 season or whether they can. You know, if you told a dollar today is worth 3 or 4 times that in 3 years' time, and yet you're pretty sure if you don't reach a certain finish in 2022, you'll be fired, is it that relevant?
Yeah.
You know? And so I think every team is in a different spot with where they're at, and I think everyone should have very clear plans with their leadership about what they're trying to do. I will say for us is we wanted to vault ourselves into championship contendership last off season and spent accordingly to do that, and obviously overperformed an expectation to take down a title. And now, how do we become a legacy big championship window team is obviously the question that's going to be asked by leadership, as it should be. You don't want to be a one-time winner. You don't want to be a footnote in history. So to do that, is it spending more money on imports? Is that going to be the way to do it? Or is it finding ways to buff up our already pretty decent talent development system that hasn't really hit LCS yet and finding ways to make it hit LCS. And I think these are sort of questions where I don't have all the answers. Kind of depends on what happens in the off season, but I'm inclined to think that finding different ways to support what is clearly a very, very strong lineup by North American um, standards and within the three resident, two import structure that we have. I'm inclined to believe that right now, but just like C9 plans changed very fast a year ago with the rule changes, you have to be nimble always.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll ask you this last one just for fun, because you said you teased me for asking or not being willing to ask. Do you think we're going to see really big things happen this off season like we did last year, or will it be a little quieter?
I think my instinct is I was thinking maybe a bit quieter, but my instinct is that people will want to shake up. I think the one thing that's kind of set in stone is Worlds is in North America next year, as far as we know. If no last minute complications happen, and that's a way to guarantee. Like people watch the Worlds broadcast, and they're like, "What the hell is a State Farm?" and things like that, right? Because it's not a worldwide product, right?
Yeah.
But State Farm at Worlds is going to be an insanely valuable kind of like ad spend for them, right? Because it's going to be to a North American fan base, an engaged fan base in that way, and probably there'll be different activations on site in North America. Like it's going to be big there. North American sponsor money is obviously the thing that separates us from a lot of other regions. The fact that we're one country rather than Europe that has all their regional budgets, and thus making Worlds or not making Worlds, I have to assume for the teams that have the budget to do so is going to be an insane arms race. And I think teams will take different bets, and they need to be aggressive because a lot is riding on Worlds 2022 in North America. I'm sure you believe this too with the LCS and viewership and all these things. I think it's very clear that kind of everyone needs to look at Worlds 2022 and work out how they can be a part of that being a big success. And the team and the broadcast and Riot are all going to be as invested in that as possible. So, yeah, I don't think it's the year to go budget. I think it's probably the year to go big for most teams. So I would expect it to be some big signings, some happy moments, some sad moments. But, yeah, the change is probably going to be there, Travis.
All right. Well, sounds like I've got a lot of work ahead of me as we're covering all this stuff. But thank you so much, Papasmithy. Is there anything you want to say to the 100 Thief fans out there?
I want to say thank you so much to the fans for, I think, taking our World's ups and downs in the right light. I think a lot of people have kind of had the right energy about them and been disappointed about the things they should be disappointed about. Like if you leave the T1 versus 100 Thieves second round robin match where we couldn't make the Malphite hard engage comp work, and you're not disappointed about that, then you're numb as a fan. Like that was a disappointing game for everyone. You see the players, we released like a behind the scenes kind of heist-esque video, and FBI is calling it out. Everyone mirrors those feelings and feels it the same way, but also seeing the happy faces and like the chance for us to show our chops in the game against EDG, and then hopefully, I think our fans are all left wanting more. I think they want to see more of this roster. They want to see more of what we're capable of in 2022. And it's on me and the smart people around here to work out how to deliver on that. So expect us to grow from here. And if we don't, hold me and the rest of us accountable.
Very good. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know that perhaps you have some extra time given that you're stranded in Iceland right now, but
I'm getting a really important Discord message here. Might need to attend to this really quickly.
Okay. So, very good.
Come on, I mean, this off season doesn't stop for anybody.
True. Okay. Well, I can't wait to cover it. Thank you so much, Papasmithy, for the interview. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things LCS right here on my YouTube channel. Bigger, better, cooler. That is how I would describe North America's performance now that Cloud9 has officially made it out, and who knows who else will be after I film this outro. But it's also the exact way that you can describe the new Alienware Aurora that has released in celebration of Alienware's 25th anniversary. This thing looks amazing. It's an evolution of their legendary design that you may have seen before you've checked out their stuff. It's fantastic. It's just so neat to see what they are doing over there with this new setup. It's just so beautiful. So anyway, I'd love it if you guys could go check out the new Alienware Aurora. You can do so at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the description below, and use my code. And yeah, it's gonna be fantastic.